A history of human pregnancy. Human pregnancy sucks, but why? When we compare humans to other animals, humans have a more challenged birth, even when compared to the birth of our closest ancestors. So, what is to blame? The difficulties that come with human birth stems from a combination of long labor times, larger infant heads, narrowing maternal hips, and the size of the fetus relative to the mother. For example, if a 140-pound mother gives birth to a 7-pound infant, then that infant represents about 5% of her total body weight. To bring this into perspective, when a 1,000-pound horse gives birth to a 100-pound foal, that foal represents 10% of her body weight. What this means is that newborn humans are relatively helpless and dependent upon the care of parents or others in order to survive. Some animals have pregnancies that are relatively easy. In pigs, a full-size sow might weigh 600 to 800 pounds, but the piglets weigh only about 1 pound, or less than 1% of the mother's total weight. Opossums have pregnancies that last only about 2 weeks. However, because they are marsupials, they give birth to relatively helpless young, which they then carry inside their pouch for the next 2 to 3 months. The 9-banded armadillos, bears, and badgers practice delayed implantation. They can hold an embryo in a dormant state until conditions are good enough for pregnancy to progress. Imagine holding your embryo until you have finished your education or gotten that next job promotion. Pretty cool. Some animals have a harder time than the pig or the possum. Imagine, if you will, a 230-pound baby, or being pregnant for almost 2 years. At up to 23 months, elephants boast the longest gestation period of any land animal. They also boast big babies, with a newborn elephant weighing about 230 pounds. But the elephants got nothing on the frilled shark. The frilled shark are primitive eel-like animals that have extraordinarily slow-growing embryos. These embryos put on only about half an inch each month. At that rate, the total pregnancy length of a frilled shark is estimated at 3.5 years. And what about male pregnancy? Male seahorses are famously active dads, even taking on the role of an egg incubator. The females deposit the unfertilized eggs into the pouch of the male's belly. He then fertilizes them and protects these eggs for several weeks to come. The male then gives birth to around 200 hatchlings. However, these hatchlings are independent and usually receive little or no nurturing from their seahorse parents. Some animals are champion breeders. Guinea pigs are capable of getting pregnant as early as 4 weeks of age, and females will go into heat only 2 to 15 hours after giving birth to a whole litter. Shingleback lizards have 1 to 2 babies at a time. Combined, these 2 babies make up 1/3 of the mother's body weight. This would be similar to a human giving birth to a 7-year-old. From an evolutionary perspective, human pregnancy is still quite unique. Human pregnancy tends to last longer than pregnancy in other mammals if you adjust for factors such as body size. The actual process of labor tends to last longer than in other animals, and human pregnancy and labor are also much more dangerous. The evolution of human birth is an incredible story, 1,000,000 years in the making. Human childbirth is believed to have evolved and paved the way for the relatively larger brains that humans possess relative to our overall size. Even when comparing human birth with primates, we find that monkeys are born facing the same direction of the mother. If humans tried to guide their babies out this way, they risk bending the back awkwardly against the natural curve of the spine. Pulling on a newborn at this angle risks injury to its spinal cord, nerves, and muscles. In the battle of the baby's head versus the birth canal, we see that the brain of a newborn chimp is less than half the size of a newborn human baby. whereas the overall size of the birth canal is about the same as in humans. The missing link in understanding human pregnancy may indeed be Lucy, an Australopithecus afarensis, who is one of the first known relatives of mankind, and her species' body structure was designed for upright walking. Lucy is 3.2 million years old. When examining the pelvis of Lucy, we see that it's somewhat intermediate between the structure of the chimpanzee and the modern human. In humans, there is a conflict between the maternal pelvis size and fetal head size. The bigger human brains means infants' heads were getting larger over time, and on the other hand, walking upright limited the width of the pelvic girdle in women. Thus, human birth was constrained by the need to pass a larger head through a pelvis that was small enough to allow the woman to continue to walk upright. One of the modifications that we see to allow childbirth to continue is a somewhat flexible cranium. Human newborns have a flexible cranium due to unfused skull bones. In addition to this, the maternal pelvis becomes somewhat flexible during the birthing process as well as leading up to birth due to a hormone produced in the woman's body called relaxin. Perhaps the most significant modification in humans compared to other extant primates is that humans are born basically helpless. We see that the pelvic bone of the Neanderthals was relatively larger than the modern human, but the missing link of the Australopithecus, Lucy, was between the size of the Neanderthal and modern humans. Even when comparing the Australopithecus with other hominids, such as the P. troglodytes, we can see that the fetus did not have to turn during the birthing process. The Australopithecus afarensis fetus probably entered the birth canal sideways, similarly to humans. While the human pelvis has widened considerably over the course of evolution, the demands of walking upright have put a constraint on how wide it can be. Bipedalism, or walking on two legs, has also led to a marked vertical shortening of the pelvis, leading to what researchers call the obstetric dilemma. The obstetric dilemma is the difficult trade-off between the demands of bipedalism and having babies. One consequence of this is that the human baby's head has to rotate 90 degrees during childbirth. For chimpanzees and other primates, childbirth is still relatively easy compared to humans. The brain of a newborn chimp is less than half that of a newborn baby, although the overall size of the birth canal is about the same as we see in humans. Human babies have big heads, which makes their passage through the birth canal a challenge for both them and their mothers. The brain and head of a child is the fastest growing part of the young body. The brain and head reach 75% of adulthood size by the age of 3, and 90% of adult size by the age of 5. Babies are born before their brains have fully developed. This is by design. Trying to pass an adult-sized human head during delivery is a frightening proposition, and we see human birth being pushed to its limits of tolerance today. The brains and skulls of developing fetuses can't grow bigger than they do in the womb than they already do. This is because they would not fit through the mother's pelvis. Some human adaptations to giving birth include soft spots, allowing the bones of the fetal skull to be molded, allowing it to fit through the birth canal. These soft spots can also accommodate the explosive brain growth that takes place after birth. In the first few years of life, the human brain doubles in size from about 400 cc's to 800 cc's, and ultimately reaches an adult average size of about 14 cc's. Human infants are especially helpless because their brains are undeveloped at birth. A human fetus would have to undergo a gestation period of 18 to 21 months instead of the usual 9 in order to be born at a neurological and cognitive developmental stage that would compare to that of a chimpanzee. The explanation for our 9-month gestation period and helpless newborns is that natural selection has favored childbirth at an earlier stage of fetal development in order to accommodate for both large-sized brain and upright locomotion. About 2 million years ago, our hominid ancestors began to change. They lost their more ape-like features, such as having relatively short bodies, long arms, and small brains. Instead, they began to gain more human-like traits such as taller bodies, shorter arms, and bigger brains. To walk on 2 legs efficiently, the hominid skeleton had to be pushed and pulled into a new configuration, and that affected the pelvis. In most primates, the birth canal inside the pelvis is relatively straight. In hominids, it soon began to look very different. Hips became relatively narrow, and the birth canal became distorted, resulting in a cylinder that varied in size and shape along its length. During human birth, the fetus typically navigates a tight, convoluted birth canal by flexing and rotating its head at various stages. This complex process comes with a high risk of birth complications, from prolonged labor to stillbirth or maternal death. These complications are believed to be the result of a conflict between humans adapting to walking upright and the larger human brain. Bipedalism developed around 7 million years ago and dramatically reshaped the hominid pelvis into a real birth canal. Larger brains, however, did not start to develop until only 2 million years ago. This is when the earliest species of the genus Homo emerged. The evolutionary solution to the dilemma brought about by these two conflicting evolutionary forces was to give birth to a neurologically immature and helpless newborns with relatively small brains, a condition known as secondary altriciality. The Australopithecines, who lived about 4 to 2 million years ago, had a complex birthing pattern compared to the great apes. Because Australopithecines, such as Lucy, had a relatively small brain size, but already displayed morphological adaptations to bipedalism, they are ideal to investigate the effects of these two conflicting evolutionary forces. Researchers have used 3-dimensional computer simulations to simulate the birthing process using different fetal head sizes. Every species has a typical ratio between the brain size of its newborn and adults. Based on the ratio of non-human primates and the average brain size of adult Australopithecus, the researchers calculated a mean neonatal brain size of 180 grams. This would correspond to a size of 110 grams in humans. Also taken into account is increased pelvic joint mobility during pregnancy and determined realistic soft tissue thickness. It was found that only 110-gram fetal head sizes passed through the pelvic inlet and midplane without difficulty. This means that Australopithecus newborns were also neurologically immature and dependent on help, similar to babies of today. Compared to great apes, the Australopithecine brain developed for longer outside the uterus, enabling infants to learn from other members of the group. This prolonged period of learning is generally considered crucial for cognitive and cultural development of humans. This conclusion also supports the appearance of the earliest documented stone tools, which date back to 3.3 million years ago, which is long before the genus Homo appeared. Despite what would seem evolutionarily unfavorable for modern human birth, we find that 1 in 1,000 human mothers have a baby whose head is too big to fit through the birth canal. This makes a cesarean section necessary. Virtually all mothers experience pain in childbirth, and delivery takes much longer in humans than other mammals. On average, labor lasts about 9 hours for first-time mothers. In comparison, apes and monkeys generally give birth within 2 hours. Cross-culturally, assistance in childbirth is almost universal. Although evolution ought to favor low-risk, easy deliveries, this is not how it turned out for humans. In order to understand why, we need to consider the advantages and disadvantages of more developed newborns, wider hips in mothers, and the metabolic demands on the mother. Human newborns are unique among mammals in that, unlike other singly born offspring, our babies cannot immediately get up, feed, and walk around like a newborn foal. Yet our newborns' brains are much more active than those of a litter of helpless newborn puppies with their eyes still closed and their ears unable to hear. Thus, in comparison to other mammals, human babies are born at an earlier developmental stage, before their bodies have developed enough to walk around. There is a strange intersection of two basic adaptive strategies: an active brain with an inept body. This is widely thought to have evolved because of our unusually large brain and our bipedal mode of getting around. In humans, the size of the head of full-term fetuses is a tight fit for the mother's bony birth canal. We need a wide pelvis in order to bear big-brained babies, but a narrow one in order to walk and run efficiently. The compromise between these two opposing needs is to carry babies as long as possible so that the brain can grow in utero, and then, just before the baby's head gets too big to fit through the birth canal, deliver the infant earlier relative to when other mammals deliver theirs. The work of reproduction is not finished then. For the first year after birth, human babies continue to develop rapidly in both brain size and body maturity. It's a risky strategy that calls for a great deal of investment by the mother. Not only must she grow the baby inside of her womb for 9 months, but she also must continue to care for and protect the helpless infant for another 12 months after birth. In order to grow into big-brained adults, our mothers have to give us a great deal of care and feeding. Of course, fathers make genetic contributions to the baby and can ease the mother's task substantially if they provide for or protect the mother of their offspring. The prolonged period of breastfeeding needed by a baby human is the most energetically demanding period of a female's life. A mother may even allocate her own brain during pregnancy, losing some 4% of its volume in order to meet the energetic demands of her baby's brain. This loss is fortunately regained in about 6 months after birth. Some have speculated that the reason female mammals are often much smaller in body size than males is so that the lifetime energetic needs of a female who experiences metabolically demanding pregnancy and lactation will equal those of males. The duration of human pregnancy is 38 to 40 weeks and is absolutely longer than that of chimps, gorillas, and orangutans. The duration of pregnancy in chimps is 32 weeks, whereas it is 37 to 38 weeks in gorillas and orangutans. When taking the maternal body size into account, human pregnancy is longer than compared to the great apes. Human babies' brains are only 30% of adult size, as opposed to 40% in chimps. The difference in newborn brain size seems to suggest that human babies are born at an earlier developmental stage than other primates. Given how large a mother's body size is, how big a brain can she afford to grow in her baby? All things considered, childbirth can be the most exciting and loving event that makes the stressful, exhausting, and unpredictable experience of childbirth well worthwhile. The biological release of a hormone called oxytocin calms down the mother and helps with pain during the labor process. Many women experience a feeling of euphoria when they hold their baby for the first time. The presence of oxytocin in the mother assists in the bonding process and may help the mother to forget the unpleasantness of the birthing process itself. Some obstetricians look at birth as occurring when the fetus starts to starve. As the baby grows in both brain and body in the womb, its demand for energy accelerates exponentially. At some point, the mother reaches the limit of her ability to supply the fetus's demands, and labor begins. Thank you for watching. Some obstetricians, all things considered, childbirth can be the most exciting and loving event. Childbirth can be an exciting, lovely, selfless event that makes the stressful, exhausting, and unpredictable experience of childbirth well worthwhile. When the baby comes, an amazing thing occurs between the baby and the adult that makes eye contact with it. The brains of the adult and baby fall into sync. Those shared patterns of brain activity may actually pave the way for better communication, pave the way, pave the way for bonding and healing. And also, the biological release of a hormone called oxytocin calms down the mother and helps with pain during the labor process. Many women experience a feeling of euphoria when they hold their baby for the first time. The presence of oxytocin in the mother assists in the bonding process and may help the mother to forget the unpleasantness of the birthing process itself.